Hi, my name's Thete, a Mythic Raiding Retribution Paladin, and in this update I'm going to go over the changes that came with the build that just came out from my point of view last night. It may well be the last build that comes out before the pre-patch goes live, although no dates has still been confirmed. We're still just running on the assumption of the 19th of July without any real idea whether it will or not. Okay, I'm going to look at changes first of all. Now, Judgment has changed mechanically rather than just tuning, in that instead of now cleaving to an additional mob, it cleaves to an additional 2. So the baseline Judgment will now spread the debuff and of course do damage to 2 further targets, which means that for AoE purposes, Mastery increases slightly in value, only slightly, it's still in last place. Also means because the greater Judgment talent has remained the same, it does another additional 2 targets. It means you can have the debuff spreading to up to 5 targets as long as they're pretty close by. Now, there have been a series of nerfs to not baseline abilities, but to Blade of Wrath and Zeal and Divine Hammer. This means that the relative value of the likes of Virtue's Blade and Fighters of Justice has increased in comparison. I inputted the new values here. So these are the values for the different forms of Blade of Justice. Now I've put 2 versions of Blade of Wrath in. One where we're taking Final Verdict, one where we are not, because one of the things I take account of with these calculations is the proportion of a Templar's Verdict it can generate because of the Holy Power generation. So obviously you can see, you know, when you've got Final Verdict, it is worth more. Of course it is. Now you can see here, Blade of Wrath is still sort of winning out over Virtue's Blade. Again, just as I've said in previous videos, this is assuming we're going to use it on cooldown. This is not always the case though, and every time we delay, we're sort of changing its relative worth compared to, say, Virtue's Blade. Now, these values are with what I have on live, after I took all my Mastery enchants off and replaced them with crit enchants, which is to have 13% haste and 41% crit. Then what I did is I transferred over some gems to the PTR, some haste gems, and gemmed up, because remember, at the moment we're looking like we still want to get up to that 30% haste. So I put all these gems in. I changed all the crit enchants to haste, with the exception of on the weapon, kept that as crit. We don't need a randomly proccing haste. When I did this, I didn't actually lose very much crit. I went from 41% crit down to 39% crit. But I went up to 30% haste. Now I haven't, I know this is the magic number, I haven't manufactured this. This is just pure luck. It just so happened that when I put those haste gems in, and do note the haste gems, like, they're worth more. They're 200 when this thing goes live. They're worth 200 for each of those secondary stats, each gem, the immaculate gems that is. And when I swapped the enchants out as well, it just so happened I had 30% haste. So what I've been able to do is just to sort of demonstrate what the rotation would be like, just on a dummy first of all, is what you can see is it is actually pretty good. You should be aware of the window. I'm not going to say you don't have to. You can forget about the window. You can't, even on single target. But you never have to fear being in a situation where you've got 5 holy power and you're waiting for the Judgment to come off cooldown so you can put the window back up. That never happens, because at 30% haste, you've only got like 1.23 seconds of downtime if you are using Judgment on cooldown. And what that basically means is you won't have 5 holy power for that, because you will have just spent it as the window is about to close. Because remember the rotation that I've put in the guide videos that are already out now. You can click on the link there if you have not seen those yet. So if your window is about to close, and you've got some holy power to spend, then spend it. If you haven't got any holy power to spend at that time, you're still not going to be on 5 holy power when the window's down. And if you do spend it, again, you can be building up holy power then. So there's never a fear of that. The only thing that can go very slightly wrong is the execution sentence lands in that 1 second. That's quite unlikely. So unlikely I wouldn't even worry too much about making sure it couldn't happen. With this particular haste, my execution sentence falls in just over 5 seconds. Well, Judgment's an 8-second window. So all I have to, the only bad thing I could do is if I got 4 seconds into the window, if I fired off my execution sentence there, it might just miss the window. Well, the chance, it's not going to happen very often across the whole fight, so I'm not even going to worry too much about that. But anyway, what does the haste do? Well, the haste, as you can see here, of course, increases the value of all forms of Blade of Justice, of course, because shorter cooldowns. And again, these DPS values assume that we're going to be using it off cooldown. Again, with a lot of haste, though, it's not realistic to say that. This is like a maximum DPS we're going to get from it if you think of it that way. Except I haven't taken into account crits, except for Virtue's Blade, but that's the extra crit. And again, we can see that Blade of Wrath is still a health, in fact, even more so above. I mean, Blade of Wrath benefits from haste more so than Virtue's Blade. But we haven't lost much crit. It's not like a haste versus crit thing here. It's just Blade of Wrath is just so much better. But look at the cooldown, 5.76 seconds at this point. It's quite rapid. And if I take Fires of Justice, which is also looking... Fires of Justice and Zeal sort of very close. Fires of Justice, you look at it mathematically slightly better. But I will warn you, I've found that it's very difficult to use that off cooldown. I do frequently find myself with 2 charges of it, which means it'd be slightly weaker. I would still prefer to use Zeal. The reason why I've been using Fires of Justice is just because Zeal is still does not appear to be proccing the class trinket. I'm minded to use Fires of Justice and keep using the class trinket. In terms of other changes, there have been a couple of buffs. Crusade has been buffed again, so it's now at 3.5%. Damage and haste stacking up every time you spend Holy Power. Still quite difficult to do that with the pre-patch. I mean, it'll be a lot better once we get to level 110 and we've got more of the artifact filled out. It's still not one I'm looking at with any sort of appeal. Just because the start of the fight, the ring's going to be popped at the start of most fights. You're going to do very, very weak damage. I mean, remember the whole point of DPS is to try and stack as many cooldowns as possible. Whether your fights are really short or really long, I don't see it as being overall a benefit. It's not going to help with the ring, and the ring will account for an awful lot of damage. It's not something you want to mess about with or just ignore or just sort of go, it doesn't matter. So I'm still minded to use Divine Purpose unless someone shows me some pretty convincing sims that have Crusade overall as better, which is unlikely to be the case because when people do produce sims, of course, it's for a particular fight length or a particular type of fight, which will not necessarily model the fights I'll be doing when this goes live. But it is much more interesting for level 110. Templar's Verdict received a slight buff, and Execution Sentence, which is not shown here, received a nerf. Now, this is rather strange. You could understand it if it was a tuning issue for level 100 when this goes live for the pre-patch. But the problem is looking ahead to level 110, and again, when we've got our Ashbringer with a few basic traits filled out, we've already had the problem that Final Verdict will be better than Execution Sentence. Because on the Ashbringer we get a number of traits that buff the damage of Templar's Verdict. We get none that buff the value of Execution Sentence. So the relative strength of Execution Sentence and Final Verdict will shift. This only makes it worse. This is slightly buffing Templar's Verdict, not by a massive amount, but a slight amount. And we're having an actual nerf of Execution Sentence. So as things stand, they're surely... I don't actually know. It could be that they are actually trying to tune for before the launch, but I don't really see the point of going to a lot of trouble to tune for that period of time and then have to suddenly make a load of changes when Legion goes live, which is what they're going to have to do. Because as soon as we are a couple of weeks in, all of a sudden no one will take Execution Sentence because it will be weak and it's hassle. It's extra hassle using it. It's not a great deal extra hassle, actually. It's just an extra button, to be honest, if you've got enough haste. But if you haven't got enough haste, then potentially more hassle. So that's a strange one. I don't actually know what the explanation for that one is. I did actually go... I spent a long time queuing for an Elephant. I queued for all of them, and it still took an hour to be able to get in. and all I got with an Archimond. Unfortunately, I can't show you a great deal because, well, first of all, this happened on the trash. I have no idea what was going on there with the tanks. And then on the boss itself, it seems that the tanks were utterly... I mean, like, I'm not harsh with people who don't necessarily know how to play well, but I would judge a tank who didn't know how to play well would be someone who maybe takes too much damage because they're not managing their active mitigation. If they can't actually maintain threat on a mob, that's them not even trying, because there's no skill to that at all. That's just simple. So I was not very happy here. So we got rid of the tanks. And then we pulled again with only one tank in the raid, which was fine up to a point until that tank got whisked away into the Twisted Nether. And then guess who was tanking then? But, I mean, if anyone wants to sort of see, it doesn't really make any sense, the logs at this point, because there's a wide variety of item levels, and mine is going to be the upper end of that. But the period while I was alive anyway looks a bit like that. I mean, you can sort of see Shadow Priest were bossing it. I wasn't using I wasn't using anything to track anything, so I was very much just looking down my bars in my defense here, and also I was not using the macro to maintain my class trinket stacks. I was just going in there completely without anything. So I would have been dropping my stacks whenever I was switching targets. But it doesn't look too bad. I mean, you know, it was about 77% there. Over 3 minutes. It looks okay to me. It doesn't look disastrous. I mean, the only time to really tell will be when you are trying this with your own guild, because ultimately that's what matters. It doesn't matter how much damage you can do compared to everyone else in the world. It matters how much damage you can do compared to everyone else in your raid. That is ultimately all that matters. But anyway, those are the changes from this build. Maybe that will be it until it goes live, or maybe they'll bring out a new build, even if they're planning on having the patch go live on the 19th, which will be in a week's time, or just under a week's time in America, because it will realistically come out on the 20th in Europe, if it is intended for that date, when the PvP season ends, but still no word. That being the case, they might still bring some changes out with the patch, or they may not. If they do, I will try and get a video out really quickly if I can. I mean, this one's come out fairly quickly because, of course, I'm not at work at the moment. I've got me summer holidays. So I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask those. But I think those are the only changes over what I've already done in the guides. If you found it useful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you later.